The best thing that I've ever gotten out of doing this one property was the learning lesson of, holy crap, I missed out on probably seven-figure deal here for me and my family because I was too focused on one strategy only. Hey everybody, I am Tarl Yarber with Fixated Real Estate, and once again, I want to thank you for joining me today. Today we are going to do a breakdown of a couple of BRRRR properties: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And I'm also going to break down the benefits of BRRRR as well as the pitfalls of BRRRR, and also why flipping houses is actually a really good way to become very good at the BRRRR strategy. So for those of you guys that are watching this that have never done a buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, but you've done some flips before, then it's an easy shoe-in to start keeping some of these properties as rentals. For those of you guys that have never done a flip, never done a BRRRR, go ahead and take some notes on this. And for those of you guys that are seasoned experts, go ahead and judge me throughout this whole presentation and make any comments that you want to have. That said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. I have a whole presentation for you guys. I do want to clarify that the main point of this presentation today, what I'm going to show you guys today, is to teach you guys some of the mistakes I've made, especially when I started out in this business, doing some of my first properties and some of my first BRRRRs, and some huge mistakes and huge opportunities that I missed out because of the BRRRR strategy, because I wasn't familiar with it, because I was so focused on only flipping houses. And if you don't know my backstory, I flipped hundreds and hundreds of houses. I've actually done about a little over 600 properties so far, just in flips. And for the first few years of my career, I didn't keep any of them whatsoever. I just flipped. And I'm going to show you one of my biggest mistakes in that. So jumping into it, let me go ahead and get in one of my presentations for you guys and break this down. All right, so sharing my screen. Here we go. So if you don't know what it is, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. That is the name of the game for this thing. So what has flipping houses done for me? So I flipped hundreds of houses before I ever kept a single rental, like literally hundreds. And looking back on it, one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my entire career was not keeping any of them. And if you talk to guys like Jay Scott and other guys that have flipped hundreds of houses as well, and you ask any of us what our biggest regret is, it's selling all those houses, especially as the market started to improve. And looking back in time, we should have kept more, which is why we're keeping more now. You can get rich flipping houses, but you cannot get wealthy flipping houses. You can make lots of income flipping houses, but you cannot get wealthy flipping houses because you have to reinvest that money and keep them and keep your investments and assets somewhere. Like most people that flip lots of houses, they just spend lots of money. Just telling you guys that. Okay, anyways, so look at this house here. It's a pretty messed up house. This is a house in Seattle. It's a house that we actually did many years ago. But when you first look at this and you think about it, what a normal landlord would think. What would a normal landlord, and I'm talking about somebody that wants to just put 20% down on a house, get an 8% return on their money, put a tenant in it, and call it a day. Would a normal landlord buy this house, right? At least a normal reputable landlord, right? Maybe a slumlord might like it, I don't know. But most landlords would look at this and possibly run away from this because look at everything that's wrong with it. You got a chimney that's in the middle of nowhere. And if you know Seattle, this is in Seattle. Seattle houses, when you go in there, there's no fireplace. That chimney is an old venting stack for an old school furnace. Plumbing is galvanized, so you can usually tell by the roof boots and stuff. New roof is the roof's messed up, so it's gonna need that. The gutters are messed up. There's literally a lawn growing out of them. The siding, you can't tell from this photo, but it's asbestos, cab board, cement asbestos board. It needs new windows. They're all old school, single pane aluminum windows. And there's just a list of things that go on. In fact, we did so much to this property, it's not even funny. But would a house flipper get excited about this house? Heck yeah, a house flipper would get excited about this. I bought it, right? I was a house flipper. We completely remodeled the hell out of this thing. We put $120,000 into it. Like that's how much rehab that needed to be done into it. We totally made it beautiful. But this presentation is not about this house. This presentation is about why this house and houses like it are house flippers' dreams, but most landlords run away from them. But if you get really good at BRRRR, you can good at flipping houses, and you look at a house like this and you say, wow, I could totally flip this house. Well, the only next step when it comes to BRRRRing and keeping it is just not selling it, right? You can do an amazing flip, right, and have it not be a good BRRRR. But you cannot have a good BRRRR if it's not a good flip. I hope that makes sense. You cannot do a good BRRRR unless it's a good flip. But you can do a good flip, that's not a good BRRRR, right? And we'll go into that a little bit too. So jumping into it, some of the benefits of BRRRR. For those of you guys that aren't familiar with it, is you get to combine the growth of flipping with the cash flow of rentals. So like I said earlier, it's literally just a flip that you don't sell, right? And instead you rent it out. And the key is you don't sell it on purpose. There's a lot of people that are out there that are selling their keeping their flips as rentals because they can't sell them, right? So, but this is intentional. You actually don't want to sell it. You want to keep it. So you get serious equity because you build it in through forced depreciation, through fixing the house. The house is going to fall over. And you get serious cash flow if you do it right. Now, like I said earlier, you can have a great flip. That's not a good BRRRR because you might have huge equity in the property, but if you don't cash flow in the property, then it might not be a good rental. So that's another thing to think about later on BRRRRing. Ability to get creative with financing, and I'll explain that a little bit later. Long-term capital gains tax versus actual income tax. So most flips, and most people aren't aware of this, but most of the time when you flip a house, you get taxed as ordinary income. Now, I'm not a tax professional or CPA. Talk to them for all the expert advice, but you can also 1031 exchange. You get 4 ways to generate wealth: cash flow appreciation, tax benefits, loan pay down. There's all sorts of great stuff for doing BRRRR. It's the coolest thing in the world, but there is actual problems with it, which we'll show later, right? So let's talk about this first property here. 16115 12th Avenue East. This is a property that I did a few years ago, and it is your typical nightmare looking house that is very, very scary. So here's some photos. I don't know if you can tell, but there is a house in there, right? And I'm not sure if you can see it or not. But here's a little house, right? It's way in there. This house was vacant for 2 years, 2 years straight. It was an estate sale. Nobody lived in it. The heirs couldn't be found. Finally, they got found, and we were able to tie it up and be able to buy it off market. Here's kind of a fun picture. This is the electrical meter that is on a tree, right? And I don't know if you know this, but that is not code, right? You cannot. And also, don't you love the waterproofing here? This is old messed up roof shingles that they threw on there to protect it from water, right? And of course, there's a burnt out outlet because it short circuited. So good stuff. Inside the house was a hoarder house. There was 3 tons of spoiled canned food in a sunroom. And I don't have photos of it on this thing, I don't think, but 3 tons of spoiled canned food in a sunroom. And it was the type of room that when you open up the door, you're like, holy shit, and you close the door really fast because it smelled like death. This lady was an interesting hoarder. She had all these bags everywhere, and each one of those bags had a piece of clothing in it. So she had a whole setup for it. It was amazing. So as you can tell too, the landscaping, very, very, very heavy landscaping. So what are the numbers on it? It was a 3-bedroom, 1.75 bath house, 1,360 square feet, built in 1961. But here's the kicker. It was on a 2.48 acre lot, 108,000 square foot lot. So big lot, right? Just chilling there. This is in Pierce County, Washington, near Tacoma area called Spanaway. It was zoned moderate density single family, which meant you can get 6 houses per acre. I want to preface this. I did not look at that, and I'm going to come back to that in a second. So all I cared about, and remember, this is a couple years ago, I did hundreds of houses. I flipped hundreds of houses. All I thought about when I saw this house was flip, 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 flip. That's all I'm going to do is flip, 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 flippity, flip, and I'm going to make money on the flip. So I needed it to still be a 3-bedroom, 1.75 bath house. I didn't need to add any other square footage. I just needed to make it better, right? Lots of demo trash, as you can tell from landscaping issues. And it was the type of landscaping that every time we cut some of the landscaping back, we found trash, dump stuff, like it was a major dump site. And it got to the point that we're like, stop cutting all the blackberry bushes, because every time we did that, we found a car, we found toilets, we found all sorts of crazy stuff. And the bills just kept getting higher and higher and higher. And on 2.5 acres, there's a lot of landscaping. So eventually you get to the point where you're like, I don't think we need to clear all of 2.5 acres. We had to do some moderate plumbing and electrical. And so here's our initial numbers. This is what we kind of assumed would happen on this property. We assumed that we knew we could buy it $177,000 all in. We assumed we spent $65,000 on the rehab because there was a lot of extensive damages you guys saw on that. And we thought it might sell for $315,000. I did not check rents, but this is retroactively. If you're doing a BRRRR, you would also check rents. And looking back then, you could have rented out for $1,800 a month for that property at that time. And I did not look at it though, right? So afterwards, this is what the final rehab ended up being. We did lots of trash. We had, it was 2 tons, sorry, not 3 tons of spoiled canned food. Lots of landscaping, full cosmetic update. We purchased for $177,000. We were a little over budget. It was $68,900. We sold it for $322,500. So we sold it for a little bit more, but then we gave it back in concessions. That's seller concessions. We gave $7,500 back to the buyer, right, to be able to help pay for closing costs. And so our total cash on cash return was 15.7%. We did finance it at 2 points, 10%. Our final profit was 26 grand. Now, one little thought here, and what we actually we had some issue. We would have made more, but it took 70 days past the closing date to close because during this time period we were having a lot of appraisal issues and lenders were being like really bad at lending, because this house was back in 2016 and it created like major issues. So it ended up being a 6-month project because we went 2 months just in escrow to sell it in delays due to appraisals and the lender dragging their feet, and we put them on the blacklist. We don't use that lender anymore. And it should have been a 4-month project start to finish, but ended up being 6. What did it look like afterwards? Big difference house, right? And why? And this all has to do with BRRRR, trust me. Big, huge, beautiful house. There's an actual house in there. We didn't even know there's a garage, right? Way different than the inside. Full cosmetic, as you could tell, right? But we put some cool stuff in our flips. Looks beautiful. Looks great. Everybody loved it. Sold beautifully. Awesome. So why is this important to show as a BRRRR? This right here. Biggest mistake on this property was because we were so focused on this house just being a flip, we missed a huge opportunity. I told you guys earlier, this is a 2.5 acre lot. It had a mixed single family, sorry, I can't remember what it was, anyways, max single family, whatever zoning that allowed 6 houses per lot. Based off of easements and based on what we could do, we could have put 8 houses on this property, right? After everything was all said and done, we put 8. And notice all the way around this, there's already a whole bunch of houses and a subdivision all the way around it. It's just this one parcel that's chilling right in the center of all of it. It's the only undeveloped land, and we completely missed it. We didn't think about it. We didn't even look at it. And we could have sat there and had another whole strategy of this, of keeping this property, renting it out for $1,800 a month, cash flowing like $250 a month, getting all our money back out of it while going through the development phase and going through all the preliminary and all the engineering that needed to do to put 8 additional houses on this entire lot and make a hell of a lot more money than $27,000, which is what we made on a flip, which we paid income tax on. So when you start looking at your properties, how many exit strategies can you find on your properties today versus just one? The best thing that I've ever gotten out of doing this one property was the learning lesson of, holy crap, I missed out on probably 7-figure deal here for me and my family because I was too focused on one strategy only. Now, that one strategy has literally made me a ton of money throughout my life, and I've gotten really good at it. So I believe everybody should focus on one strategy for a period of time until they get really good at it, and then be able to add additional things onto it, at least be able to pay attention to it. If we would have checked zoning on this, checked to see get a little bit more information on it, we could have rented out the house, had no money into it, cash flowed it, and then totally got it through the development phase, and maybe even sold it to a developer or a builder or built the houses ourselves, right? And it would, or kept them all as rentals even afterwards, and we'd have 8 BRRRRs out of it instead of 1. So don't miss out on that lesson just because you're too focused on one strategy and one strategy only the whole time, right? So let me show you a different BRRRR that happened to us during the same time period, right? Right after we sold this property, I got a little smarter and I started going, okay, let's like actually look at some of these things. Maybe we should keep some of these properties for once. And we already had kept our first property after that, and we started like looking into it a little bit more. And this property here is a duplex that I wanted nothing to do with, right? I absolutely did not want this duplex, but it was sent to me as a package, and this is in Tacoma, Washington. It was sent to me as a package deal with another group of houses. So there was 2 houses. So basically, it was 5. It was 2 duplexes and 2 single families, all as one package off market in Tacoma. I wanted the other properties, the other 3. I did not want this one. Right, this one I was like, oh, I don't really want to do this. It wouldn't make a whole lot of money if I flipped it, right? Maybe it'd be an okay rental, but I had to buy it if I wanted to buy the other properties. So I got kind of suckered into it. I'm like, fine, I'll do it, right? Well, it ended up being the best purchase we've ever made as far as a BRRRR is concerned, and still to this day. And we bought this in 2016. Still to this day, we own it, right? And we love it to death. It's our best BRRRR like we've ever done, and it's still in our books today. So let me show you what it looks like. So, oh, there's me back when I was young and spry. So you can see here, it's only got 1 meter. It's a duplex. One of it's burned out. It's a very very ugly orange color. And if you like that color, God bless you, whatever. It was a messed up property inside. It actually had a fire at one point, but you could tell it's pretty messed up. It was set to be condemned by the city of Tacoma. The guy that owned it never took care of it. He owned it since the early 80s. And he rented it out for a while, and then he just like left it out until the city was just like, yeah, you got to fix this thing up or we're tearing it down. And which is why he sold it to us. So move-in ready kitchen, ready to go for you. Bathroom, non-existent, right? They did do new windows, so that's something that we didn't have to worry about, which was nice. The city made him do that because he didn't have windows. Galvanized plumbing, you can see all this old plumbing here. So we know all the plumbing needs to go. There's literally no electrical in this entire building, right? So we know we have to do all new electrical, all new sheetrock. There's some electrical, you can tell like it's beautiful, looking nice. The kitchen's looking good. You can see all the smoke damage from the past fire that was in it at some point that he never fixed up. This is not like some Art Deco painting. This is actually smoke damage as well. But pretty messed up house, but it's old. It's built in 1910s, 1912s duplex in downtown Tacoma. And it needed a lot of work, right? So this is something that we do for all our houses. We put together these little floor plans. So this is what it looked like before. So this was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, living room, dining, kitchen area with a deck for each unit. So this is a duplex, remember? So top and bottom unit, both units identical, right? So 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, full living area, right? This is a big living area. This is this whole area is about 950 square feet, 980 square feet, something like that, if I remember correctly. And we knew that whether we sold it as a flip or kept it as a rental, getting 3 bedrooms is better than 2, right? So how do we add an extra bedroom? Well, we have this whole long area that we go, let's shorten that up a little bit. So we made the kitchen into an eat-in dining kitchen, and we added a bedroom over here. So this is the after. So we snuck in a bedroom into this area, and we made the deck smaller. So we cut the deck in half and made that into a closet, and we got a little bit bigger bedroom here, and then a full dine-in, eat-in kitchen area and living room. And if you notice in this bedroom on this side, there was no closet. So you need a legal bedroom in order to have a legal bedroom, you need a closet. So we added a closet to that and took some living room space. So now we have a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, right? And we also added a stackable washer and dryer because there was no washer dryers in any of these units. So we were able to sneak in a washer dryer here. Original plans, it ended up over here instead after we got into it. So we'll show you that after photos. So what did it look like afterwards? Boom, right? That's what it looks like still to today. All beautiful and neat. We put a nice retaining wall. We made it blue doors. Everybody likes how pretty it is. We put LVP, electro-vinyl planking floors in there. We put all sorts of nice new finishes in. And here's the thing with our BRRRRs, every BRRRR looks like this, right? Every BRRRR we do looks fully upgraded with tile, with granite, quartz, new cabinetry. Why do we do that? Because we flipped houses for years and years and years. And one of the things that we decided to do as far as we've been doing our BRRRR strategy over the last few years is I don't want to make any complications to my business system. So we use the same finishes we use on pretty much all our flips as we do on our BRRRRs, right? And what that's done for us, and this property here taught us this property in particular, was that because we were still putting in finished grade level, like flip grade level finishes, we get a way better quality tenant. We get a higher rent that we weren't expecting. We get a higher appraisal because of that as well, most of the time. And we're able to get usually most of our money back. Now, this is contingent on your market and your comp specifically. Don't take everything I say as gospel because this is just my market and what we do, and we look at comps. If all the comps in the entire market said put in Formica countertops and put in vinyl, like sheet vinyl in everywhere and carpet throughout the rest of the house, that's what we would do to get the value we need. But in this market area, we go, okay, we want the higher appraised value, and in order to do that, we need to put in the quartz countertops, the tile, that kind of stuff. We don't need it for the rental, but we need it for the appraisal, right? And that's one of the pitfalls of BRRRR is if you can't appraise the property and get your money out, then you're kind of screwed. So we do that. The only difference that we do between our flip grade quality stuff and our rental grade quality stuff is this flooring stuff down here. We put laminate down in our flips and we put LVP down in our rentals because we wanted just a floor that we don't have to mess around with so much. So everything looks nice. There's that extra bedroom. This used to be the kitchen in the house, right? And we added this into the bedroom instead, and we moved the kitchen. And then here's the areas, blah, blah, the other 2 bedrooms and the deck. And then there's the bathroom looking all nice and neat. And this is where we put the washer and dryer, the stackable washer and dryer next to the bathroom so people can have that in their units, right? And both units are identical. So looks good, pretty, yay. Backyard, made it nicer for the doggies to go pee in, and there's parking in the back too. So what do the numbers look like? We purchased it for $85,000, which is a screaming freaking deal. But you saw what it looked like before we bought it, right? Now today, this property would cost a lot more because this was 2016. We rehabbed we thought we'd spend about $95,000 on rehab at the time. Today, my rehab would cost more because it actually sucks right now is how much rehab costs. Rent estimate, we thought we'd get $1,150 a unit, $2,300 a month. We borrowed total from a private lender, $185,000 to pay for everything. We paid 10%, 2 points for that at the time. We estimated that it would appraise for $275,000. I should do a presentation one day on how to raise private capital, but we're not going to do that today because time's sake. So our rehab ended up being a little bit more, not much, $96,480-ish. But because what I said earlier, because we put our flip grade stuff in there, and because we have a better quality product to put out in that market, we were blown away by how much we could rent this place out by the time we were done. We were able to rent the place out for $1,350 for the bottom unit and $1,450 for the top unit, which gave us an extra $500 a month cash flow, way more than we thought, because we didn't think that there was no comps in the area for showing us that having a better quality rental at the time would get us more rent. And by the time we're done with the rehab, we're like, wait, there's like everything on the market is crap. Because all the tenants, all the landlords out there are putting in like just horrible stuff in all their properties. And we have this beautiful property that we're getting massive interest in. So we should definitely raise the rents. So we did. We got $2,800 a month for it. We had to pay off the lender and everything all into it. It was $207,000. That was all our costs, all our expenses, all our interest charges, everything into it for the entire project. We refinanced out for 4.25% for a 30-year at $211,000 with our principal interest payment of $1,038. So with taxes and insurance on top of that was $1,283, and that brought our net operating income for the most part, or our cash flow to $1,517 before any property management expenses, which we self-manage internally in the company. But even if we paid 8%, wouldn't be a big deal. So that leaves the $1,500 a month cash flow for this property that we thought would only cash flow maybe $600-700 a month. And I didn't want this house. But here's the thing: it appraised in December 2017 for $350,000. So we had zero money out of pocket by the time we were done, and we had an infinite ROI at the end of the day. Now, since then, this property is now worth about $475,000 as current appraised market from where we are, and we actually are getting it refied again to pull some cash out right now for equity purposes. And that's one of the benefits of BRRRR that we miss out on flips. If this was a flip, I could have sold this, and we would have made over 100 grand on the flip and done back flips and been super happy, right? But now years later, we've been cash flowing $1,500 a month on this thing. And whether it's rented, both units are rented or not, and only if one unit's rented versus the other, we're still cash flowing something. And now we're able to refi years later, pull out equity, get a HELOC, we get 1031, right? It's worth $475 now. And we're now able to still have money from it years later, tax-free, when we pull it out as a cash out refi. And we would have never been able to do that if we just sold it. So now flipping, what did flipping do? Flipping made it so I can do this house. If I'd never flipped a house before, I would have ran away from that rehab so fast because that was a heavy rehab. You saw the photos, the before photos. The whole place was messed up. We had to fully plumb it. We had to fully get it fully all new electrical. I don't even bring up all the framing issues we had on the property, right? Because you got burnt out timbers, roof issues, all sorts of stuff. There was a massive amount of work that had to go into that property. And if I had never flipped all the properties we did, I wouldn't have been able to do the rehab. But because I got so good at that, and my team got so good at that, we were able to see a house like this or property like this, not be scared from the rehab side of it, and then get good at that, and then be able to have this be the end product, stay on budget, and so forth. So don't shy away from flips. It gets you good at rehab. I'm just going to say that. But BRRRR, better strategy long-term. Flips gives you money so that you can do BRRRR and also experience. So there are some dangers and pitfalls, right? And then we're going to get into some questions if you guys have any. If not, we'll end this as soon as we're done. So if you got questions, go ahead and start asking them on the feed, and I will answer them as soon as we're done with this part. But if you don't have any, then I'm going to end after this. So dangers and pitfalls with BRRRR. It's not all roses, sunshine, rainbows, tulips, whatever, right? It's actually, there's a bunch of stuff that can go wrong with it. So if you don't buy the property low enough, just like a flip too, you can have some issues, right? So make sure it's always, you hear it a lot in different podcasts, presentations that are out there. you make your money on the buy, right? And so you make your money on the buy. But Brian Burke said it one time, and I'm not going to say exactly his quote. It's like, yeah, people say you make your money on your buy, but you get blanking paid when you sell it, right? So I love that he said that. So look up Brian Burke. He just came out with a book for BiggerPockets. He didn't say blanking. He said a different word, starts with the F word. But yeah, you make your money on your buy, but you get blanking paid when you sell it, right? So that's true. So don't buy property low enough. You're going to have issues. If you can't get the refinance, you're definitely going to have issues as a BRRRR, right? But the bigger issue is that if you rent it out and then not qualify for the refi. Can you imagine that? That's one of the bullet points. And why is that an issue? You now have a 12-month lease tenant inside that building, and then you go to refi to get your money back, and you don't qualify for the refinance. And now you have a tenant in there that you can't get rid of because you leased it out, right? You can't just qualify, get rid of them. Now you're going to try to sell the building with the tenant in it, and that makes it a lot harder to do. Sometimes it actually makes it easier depending on what state you're in. You can do a turnkey rental, but in my market, that would piss off a lot of people, right? So they want the tenant out, especially if it wasn't good terms. That might create some issues, right? So your first loan is too short of a time frame. So there's a lot of hard money loans out there that your loan might only be a 5 or 6 month term. But if it takes you 5 or 6 months to do the rehab, or if it takes you 6 months to season the loan to be able to get cash out refis, right, later down the line, and your first loan on it for the rehab portion of it is only a 5 to 6 month loan, you're going to pay all sorts of re-up costs, like to be able to renew that loan, and it's going to cost you a lot more money. So you got to make sure that your rehab loan that you have on there, or your hard money loan, or whatever you're using to be able to purchase the property and build all the rehab out, is a long enough term loan to be able to later finish the project and get your cash out from it. If your personal business finances are not in order, that's going to be a huge issue. And especially for all you house flippers out there, I know who you are, right? I've met I met a ton of you guys, and I was one. I'm a recovering house flipper. Most seasoned house flippers have horrible finances, right? And which is why they can't refinance their properties later. So don't be that person. And if you are that person, start working on it today as fast as possible and get your finances in order, because it's going to make it to where you could finally get the cheapest money you can ever get out there, right? Instead of borrowing at 12% interest rates, you can finally start borrowing at 4, 5, 6% interest rates. So, and it'll totally save you a ton of money. So get your finances in order so you qualify for those refinances or any kind of portfolio lending that might be out there. Your house is rent ready versus not, right? But you comp it based off of flip quality products. So you take houses that are out there and you say, this is you start comping it for the ARV, the after repair value, and the comps tell you that you need to put this level of finish into this property to get this ARV, appraised value. So this particular property appraised for $350,000, right? But if we were comping it off of properties that were, flip ready, totally beautiful, and we thought we'd get $350, but we put rent ready finishes in it, which is just Formica countertop, sheet vinyl, no tile at all whatsoever anywhere. And we were hoping we get $350. We're not going to get it, because the appraiser is going to look at the higher quality houses and go, you don't have a $350,000 property here. You have a $325,000 or a $300,000 property because you didn't put the right finishes in it to comp. So make sure you're doing your comparables correctly so you can have your back end appraisal go as you plan, right? So you're not freaked out about that. I already talked about renting the house and not qualifying for it. And of course, the last pitfall for BRRRR is that you just suck at being a landlord, right? I suck at being a landlord. I am definitely not the person that should be a landlord. I don't have a lot of empathy for some of the issues that some tenants have. So I am definitely not the person that should be the landlord. So because of that, somebody else on my team is, which is my wife, right? She deals with all that, and she loves people, and she can help them out as much as possible. And she is amazing at what she does. And if it gets to the point where it's too much for her, we'll hire out a property manager, but I should never be the landlord, right? Just say that. If you're like me, hire somebody else to do it. So other than that, I think that is what I have for you guys. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. We'll go back to the main screen. If you guys have any questions, so some of you guys have some questions today. My key takeaways that I want you guys to have for this is, one, don't be so myopic on every single property that you get. If you're too fixated on wholesaling and flipping, and that's all you're thinking about, please start checking out the zonings. See if there's any multiple exit strategies, because even if you're a wholesaler, right, or a house flipper, or whatever it might be, and there are multiple exit strategies, it's going to make it so you can wholesale that deal for more potentially to guys like me, because maybe I'll see it as a BRRRR, maybe I'll see it as a development play, which makes the property worth more than it would be if it's just a flip, right? And vice versa, the other way around. If you focus too much as a landlord on properties, look at the other way, right? Could it be a flip? Could it be something else? Could you make some extra money on it? So look at other items there. And of course, keeping these properties long-term is way better than just selling them quickly, in my opinion. Not always, but most of the time. So let's answer some questions. What we got here? I'm going to answer, I don't even know what Chris Tolstoy is asking, but I'm going to say him anyways because he is local here and he is a friend of ours. So what are your thoughts on small family, 2 to 4 units, based on your success with this one? Do you think these deals are more challenging than single family? No, personally, I say that they're the same, right? It's actually better. Like if I could do 2 to 4 unit building versus a single family for a BRRRR, I would do 2 to 4 all day, right? Versus the single family. The financing of it, the residential refinancing on the back end, is the exact same process either way. If you have a 3 or 4 unit property to go get your refinancing in, you actually will qualify for it easier most of the time, depending on the loan value, because they'll start counting the rents of the other units towards your income versus just the first unit that's there. If you have a single family home, they only count the rent for that one unit, and even then they don't count all of it. And so it just depends on the portfolio lender too, or if you're going through a Fannie Freddie loan. So I think it's way easier to do a 2 to 3 to 4 unit property, especially if they're all similar shape sizes, because then you can do the same floor plan, layout, all that kind of stuff for all of them. Your issue becomes if you buy it and 3 of your units are rented out and 1 is not. And now you have 3 tenants in it, and if they're horrible tenants, if there's major issues with them, if it's a non-performing property, and you have to go through that whole process of fixing up 1 unit and then evicting the tenant or hoping that they leave, all this kind of stuff, then it becomes a nightmare there. So if you buy a building that has no tenants in it and it's just trashed, no difference than doing a single family. It's just a bigger building, right? If you buy a four unit that has 3 tenants in it or 2 tenants in it, or it's fully occupied and it's fully trashed and they're all horrible tenants, you got more issues than you do with a single family house that has 1 tenant in it, right? So to each his own on that. I hope that answers your question. I prefer the 4 unit with messed up tenants in it. That's totally trashed over single family anyways. And it's just a different structure of a deal. And if you do have the 4 tenants in there that are messed up and the house is messed up, or sorry, the property's messed up, then you just build that into your financing and you build that into your financial projections, and you negotiate that back with the seller as much as possible to be able to, get a better deal if that's the case, if you got to deal with all that crap. So, because chances are that seller is selling it because they have a messed up building and 4 tenants that they hate and they can't deal with and they just want to walk away from it, right? That's the case. Hope that answers it. Thank you, Chris, right? Hope you're doing good. Let's see, we got David Haynes. I'm starting a position as a real estate wholesale agent this summer. My long-term goal is starting BRRRRing. Any advice? Yes. Rewatch what I just said. So yeah, absolutely. So if your long-term goal is that, I'll say this to anybody. If you're full-time, if you have a job, a W-2 income, and that's where you make your money and you can actually pay your bills with that, great, keep doing that. Any money you make as a wholesaler and a real estate agent should be extra income that you set aside to either put back into marketing in your business and use that. It's like if you ever are a gambler, and which I'm not a big gambler at all, but when I do go to casinos and I win some money at blackjack, I put the money that I originally invested into the blackjack aside, and now I play with the house money, right? Which is the casino's money, the money that I won, right? Do that with your wholesaling and your agency or whatever you're doing, is that if you invest $5 grand into it and then you make 10 grand into out of it as far as a wholesale fee, take the $5 grand initial investment, put that aside, and now play with the original $5 grand to go back at it while you are living off of the income you make as, if you're working a full-time job somewhere else, right? Save your money. That's the best advice I can give there. And then, of course, treat yourself to a few kind of fun stuff. I can go on to so many advice on that, but that's the big thing I see a lot of people fail in this business is they don't control their finances. They make 10 grand on a wholesale fee and they think that if I reinvest all 10 grand back into it, I'll make 20 grand, right? That's not true, right? So you got to figure out why you made 10 grand on that deal. Did you have to put 80 hours a week into it? Did you have to spend $4,000 of marketing into it? Know your KPIs, key performance indicators, track your business. If you mail out 2,000 mailers and you get 10 phone calls, figure that out. You got to know that number. If you mail out 2,000 mailers and you get 2 deals, figure that out. You got to know those numbers, right? Those are all things you got to track. And most wholesalers don't track that stuff at all. And then be consistent. Stick with it. It's better to take, if you have 5,000 mailers to go out at once, and that's all you can do. It's better to chunk that down to 500 pieces a week than it is to dump all 5,000 at once, so that you have a consistent thing going that you can hold. So that's, and then keep mailing them over and over again. Anyway, size one. I can keep going on that forever. I should do a whole presentation just on that and some concepts there. All right. Thomas Smith, how are you getting the 30-year loans? It seems like every bank I've approached about my rentals wants to do 20-year, right? Well, that depends. So there's, if you're still, this particular property here was one of our first properties that we did as a BRRRR, and so we still qualified for the 10 conventional Fannie Freddie loans. So because of that, we were able to get 30-year, no problem. If you're going to your local community banks, there is actually a lot of community banks out there that can do portfolio loans for you for 30 years still. You're just going to pay a higher interest rate most of the time for it. And if I can get away with doing a 30-year, I'd rather pay a higher interest rate to a portfolio lender these days, which is mostly your community banks and stuff, than I would for a 20-year or a 5-year ARM or anything like that. Because for me personally, I don't like dealing with any of this stuff to begin with. So I don't want to be forced into having to refinance 5 years from now because I got a 5-year ARM to get a better rate for an extra $150 a month cash flow, right? I'd rather have less that cash flow and not have to worry about the property at all for the next 30 years if I didn't want to, right? So that's me though. I'm kind of lazy with that. But there's tons. You just got to shop around. Like lenders, even despite what's going on in the economy right now, you throw a rock, you're going to hit 2,700 lenders that are still out there trying to make stuff happen. If you're getting those kind of terms where you're talking to people and they're only giving 20 years out there, go talk to more, right? They're out there. BiggerPockets probably has a bunch. You probably go on the BiggerPockets group that's on Facebook now and ask questions there, not the Facebook page, but the group. You can go on BiggerPockets.com. There's all sorts of stuff. Check it out. They're out there. Shop around. Trust me, you'll find them. In the previous property with the land that you flipped, this is Philip, instead of BRRRR, would you have separated the land lots before or after doing the refi on the original house if you would have thought about it on that deal? So you got to stabilize the deal. So sitting there and segmenting the lots out is anywhere between a 12-month to 24-month period, right? There is a property that I will update you guys on later that is a 20-lot development down in not far from where this property was that I do own that we did subdivide. That took 2 years to go from the process of buying the property to now this week, finally, it'll be a fully 20-lot subdivided property. We bought it raw land, right? So it took 2 years, right? So in that meantime, right, for this particular property with the 2.5 acres that we just showed a second ago, yes, I would have refied that into a stabilized loan with a portfolio lender or a conventional mortgage, depending on what you qualify for. And I would have stabilized that for a 30-year mortgage, like, period. And then once that refinance was done, because the lender's going to look at that, right? Once that refinance was done, then I would then start the whole process or simultaneously start the whole process to get the preliminary plat approval. And there's a whole process there. So yes, absolutely. Because you got to think long-term with it. What if the preliminary plat doesn't get approved with the city? What if you can't subdivide it later? What if we get set down by some sort of sanctions? Or what if there's like an endangered slug on the property that they don't want us to develop anymore, right? So those are all real things that you got to think about. And if I'm not in a locked-in 30-year stabilized loan, then I'm gonna have issues later. So definitely think long-term with it. And also, I'm a big worst-case scenario guy, so I would have done that. Jonathan, this is a great question, right? Which is the number one, besides having bad finances, which is one of the number one reasons why most house flippers or most people can't successfully do this strategy traditionally, right? If you do not have a W-2 income or you don't have 2 years tax returns showing consistent income in your business, it's a lot harder to get a stabilized 30-year conventional mortgage, right? Now, I'm saying this as a sense of if you're trying to go down the traditional route to go get a 30-year from a conventional loan, Fannie Freddie conventional loan mortgage, yes, you do need 2 years tax returns. Yes, you do need to show consistent income, stabilized income for yourself because they're underwriting you personally, right? And that stops a lot of house flippers. If you started flipping and you made 300 grand last year flipping houses, and that was your first year ever doing it, and you have no other income besides that, then the banks are going to look at you sideways because you only got 1 year, even though you made a ton of money, right? But you only got 1 year track record. And they're going to look at you now in May of 2020 and go like, how's your business doing today? most underwriters aren't going to approve you if that's the case. If you're going conventional, if you're going your traditional Fannie Freddie route, right? And that's the facts. You got to have 1 more year and 2 years straight showing consistency that you have a real business, and then they will probably approve you at that point, as long as your credit's good and your debt to income and all that kind of stuff, and your finances are legible and like all that kind of, those are all other factors. If you have no income or you're just a wholesaler, you're just starting out, you lost your job, yes, it is a major issue to qualify for any of that, but it's all costs. There are plenty of other lenders that are out there, your portfolio lenders. There's some hard money lenders out there that can do institutional funding, that they can still qualify you for the rental refi, but they're going to charge you more. So maybe right now you can get a 4 or 4.5% interest rate as a rental property, maybe even less, maybe 3% interest rate as a rental property, going through the conventional Fannie Freddie route, right? That's out there because rates are so low. But you go to your hard money lender who has institutional funding, or your portfolio lender that can use some other institution that does asset-based funding, which they're just looking at the house and they don't look at you. Maybe those guys will do a 5.5% or even a 7% interest, right? But they'll still stabilize it at a 5-year or 30-year loan, right, for you. So you're going to pay more. So that's really the key here. Rate equals risk. Always remember that. This is going to be the last question. Rate equals risk. It should, and if you are more riskier because you don't have stabilized income, no W-2, no consistent income that can be shown, you're risky. Therefore, your rate is higher, right? Or you don't get a rate at all. If you have stabilized income, if you can show multiple tax returns that show that you're a consistent business or you have good income and good credit, then your risk is lower, so you get a lower interest rate. That's how lenders look at it, right? Plus, then you add the asset itself at 75% loan to value, right? Those are all risk factors. You go to an asset-based lender, right? They go, okay, we're not looking at you. We're looking at the asset only. We're taking a little bit more risk because we're not looking at you. Therefore, the rate is higher. So maybe you can get a 5, 6, 7, 8% interest rate, but you can still get it. You just have to budget that in. And then maybe you only get a 7% or 8% from on a 30-year to an asset-based lender because you still don't have your finances lined up to be able to do it. But then 2 years later, you can refinance that, and hopefully interest rates are low and so forth. So I hope that makes sense. That's a long way to answer it, but that's a real thing, right? There's still a way to do it. It just costs you more. That's all. Besides that, make sure you comment, like, subscribe. You guys can follow me at Tarl Yarber on Instagram. My company is Fixated Real Estate. You can follow us at Fixated RE on Instagram, as well as our Facebook page, Fixated Real Estate as well, FIXATD. We do these at 12 p.m. I do these at 12 p.m. Every Wednesday. You can also watch all the videos that we do on BiggerPockets YouTube channel as well. And if you guys have any more questions, ask them on the comments here, and I'll do my best to go back and answer those later during the week. So thank you for joining me. I'll see you guys later.